National Youth Day or Yuva Divas is celebrated on January 12th of every year since 1984 to commemorate the birth anniversary of one of the most prominent philosophers, monks and thinkers of India. Throughout his life, Vivekananda gave strong ideas regarding motherland, unity, religion, duty, peace and life. One of the strongest messages Vivekananda gave to the youth of India was, "My child, what I want is muscles of iron and nerves of steel, inside which dwells a mind of the same material as that of which the thunderbolt is made." Swami Vivekananda recognized the tremendous potential of the youth to bring about a social change with their nerves of steel and muscles of iron. While we work so hard on academics, being truly strong is so much more than just intelligence. On this evening, Ayuth Wisdom Lecture Series is here with an uplifting session on life of Swami Vivekananda, which will be taken by a very special guest, Professor Balakrishnan Shankar, the Dean of School of Engineering. Bala sir currently serves as a professor, head of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Amrita School of Engineering. Without much ado, I welcome Bala sir to take over the session and enlighten us with his words. Sir, please.
Thank you, Namaskar. Thank you, Bhagavati. Yeah, Namaskar. So, let's start with a small prayer. Tejomanyim Nashtakim Siknapangavilokinim Bhagavatim Mandasmidasrimukim Vatsalyam Mradavarshinim Sumadaram Sankirtanalapinim Shamangim Mudasikta Suktim Mudadanandatmikam Ishwarim. I'm very happy that Ayuth has started this, what shall I say, selected the life of Swami Vivekananda to be talked about in this Wisdom Lecture Series. It's indeed extremely important that all of us, all of you, every Indian actually, and especially the youth, all of you know about Swami Vivekananda and what he stands for. Last time, a couple of weeks ago, I think 2-3 weeks ago, many of you had given a beautiful set of talks on lectures from Colombo to Almora, which is a set of speeches that Swami Vivekananda gave when he came back to India after taking the West by storm. He literally took the West by storm. And then he came back to India, and there was a rousing reception for him all over India. And so many of you had talked on that book, lectures from Colombo to Almora. And as I said, anybody who loves India, that's what Rabindranath Tagore had said. Anybody, if you want to know India, study Vivekananda. That's what Rabindranath Tagore had said. Swami Vivekananda himself referred to himself as a condensed India. And if you read lectures from Colombo to Almora, that will fire your patriotism more than anything else. And similarly, when you read on Swami Vivekananda and his life. So at that time, I felt that, many of you had talked about lectures from Colombo to Almora, and that you should, perhaps we should also talk more about the life of Swami Vivekananda. And so that was, I'm happy that now we are here to talk about the life of Swami Vivekananda. Now, Swami Vivekananda, in the sense, each and every Indian, right, you, me, and every Indian here owes a deep debt of gratitude to Swami Vivekananda. First of all, let me start this way. Okay, you all know, I've heard of, I don't know if I've mentioned this to you before. Some of you may have heard me say this before, but let me repeat myself. That's okay. Please mute your mics. Yeah. So Einstein, you all heard of Albert Einstein, of course, is the world's leading, perhaps the greatest scientist ever to walk on earth. Einstein was asked this question, by a reporter once, how does it feel like to be the most intelligent man on earth? That time Einstein said, I don't know, ask Nikola Tesla. And Einstein considered Tesla to be even more brilliant than he is. And Tesla, as you all know, especially the electronics engineering people here should know, Tesla is the father of AC, alternating current. But not only that, and pretty much powered the entire industrial revolution. Not industrial revolution, the modern technological progress by AC. But Tesla was also known for some really outlandish ideas, and some of which he was more a mystic than a physicist or than a scientist. And many of his ideas are still yet to be explored into. But the most interesting thing is that Tesla had met this young man from India around 1890s who inspired him with talk on Indian Sankhya, on Indian scientific systems and Indian philosophy, and from which Tesla himself openly admits he borrowed many ideas and came up with, for example, mediums beyond the mind, and Tesla came up with wireless transmission of power and things like that, which still people are looking at. And that young man was Swami Vivekananda. So that is to put things in perspective. So I want you to know that Albert Einstein, whom all of us pretty much consider as the world's greatest scientist, or perhaps one of the world's greatest physicists ever to walk on Earth, considered Tesla more intelligent than himself. And this Tesla openly says that he was inspired by ideas from Swami Vivekananda. Now, Swami Vivekananda did not have a PhD in physics. Okay, he did not, take engineering like most of you. But yet, how did he inspire Tesla? Now, one more thing I'll tell you, and just to intrigue you about this, so that you should understand where I'm coming from, and why is it that it's very important that you should know this. In later on in his life, in his lectures, in the book Jnana Yoga, if you take, you will find it. He mentions a very interesting thing in his lectures in London. I can show you the book. He says something. He was talking about light and the way light travels through this universe. I'll come to. It's not a talk on physics. Don't worry. I'm not going to talk to you about physics. I'm talking to you about Swami Vivekananda. But I want you to give you a glimpse of the genius of this man. See, Swami Vivekananda says in this book on Jnana Yoga, he says, we all know that if we project a beam of light through space, it goes out and comes back to its starting point after millions of years. This is what Swami Vivekananda said somewhat in 1890s. Now, actually, from our normal understanding, that is not true. But if you look at the general theory of relativity and Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity, and if you look at the curvature of space, that is true. But most interestingly, Albert Einstein came up with this general theory of relativity around 1920s, if I remember right, 1915, 1920. Swami Vivekananda passed away in 1902, and this lecture he gave in 1896. How on earth would he know that? He said, we all know that when we project a beam of light, it comes back to its source. If I were in the audience, I would have got up and said, no, Swamiji, we don't know any such thing. But yet, he said that. And there were several astonishing insights into matter, into philosophy, into psychology that Swami Vivekananda has given that later on scientists have talked about. In fact, so that's to put it in perspective. The second thing is, he's the reason why India got its freedom. He's the reason why India woke up to its greatness. Picture this. This was in the years 1860s, okay? Swami Vivekananda was born in the year 1863, okay? 180 years ago, okay? Was born in the year 1860, more than that, right? Yeah, 180 years ago. Was born in the 1860s. That was the time when India was completely sunk under the British rule. And not only was India completely sunk under the British rule physically, it had become a slave to the British rule mentally, psychologically. The British had conquered not only the physique of the country, but the psyche of the country. The country was reduced to poverty. Thousands were starving. The only famines in Indian history, remember, India is perhaps the oldest history in earth, but the only famines in Indian history took place under the British rule. That I'll talk to you about that later. And people were suffering from oppression and tyranny and slavery and all that. It was terrible. It was terrible. You must understand, it is not a joke. You must understand, there was a time when the British used to give certificates. One certificate said, I can forward it to some of you on WhatsApp if you're interested. The certificate used to say, this man is allowed to take a seat when he's coming to talk to a British officer. Basically, what it means is, if I were under the British rule, or you were under the British rule, and you go into some British officer's office to, whatever, get your panchayat certificate or whatever, you can't take a seat. You have to stand in respect. Or you should have the certificate that gives you permission to sit down. That is what is meant by slavery, mental slavery, and we Indians accepted it. We Indians simply accepted it. We thought that at that time, that was a time when we thought that everything Indian was stupid. Indians had lost faith in their culture. They had lost faith in their philosophy. They thought their culture was just a bunch of superstitious nonsense, and that everything Western was superior. Even today, that kind of mentality still exists. But the British knew better. Okay, the conquerors deliberately concocted false theories, etc., etc. I'll talk about that later. But then, they used every possible tool to make you think, to make your and my forefathers, to make our forefathers in that time think that everything Indian was bad, we were all superstitious, and we need to, everything Western is superior, etc., etc., etc. And that's the reason why, and they broke the culture. That's the reason why I am talking to you now in English and not in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is the world's most programmable, the perfectly programmable language, because the rules of grammar are perfect. That's why it's called Samskritam, means well done. It's perfect. There's no contradiction in Sanskrit grammar, but there's a lot of contradictions in English grammar. But, this is an example. But why we lost our culture was because we were enslaved. We were in the height of darkness. And that was the time Swami Vivekananda appeared on the scene. And he was, you all know that he, was inspired, his guru was Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And so he appeared on the scene. And he had a great desire. There are two things about Swami Vivekananda. Is an uncompromising love of truth. Okay? Swami Vivekananda, young Naren, he was called Naren, right, to start with. He had an uncompromising love of truth. If you tell him something, he'll say, prove it. I want the proof. I want to know. He will not accept yes or no until and unless he understands it himself. Uncompromising love of truth. Complete fearlessness. Okay? He completely lacked fear. And that was very interesting thing about Swamiji, is he didn't have fear. And incredible compassion. Why? He wanted to know, is it true? Is Indian philosophy true? We have such a great culture. People say, on one side, people say this culture is so great that there is truth in Indian scriptures, Indian philosophy and Vedanta, that there is divinity behind this creation, that there is God, that he can be experienced. The Indian scriptures, Vedanta says that God is not an extra cosmic being sitting somewhere, but a state of being that can be experienced. Is that true? He wanted to know, is that true? And secondly, what he wanted to was, how do I bring up my country sunk in poverty and misery? He used to shed tears thinking about his countrymen and about India, and about how these two were the dominant themes of his life. His love for truth and his love for India. And you know what? If you read his life, okay, his love for India will move you so much. It'll touch you to the core, and it will make you a patriot. Really. If you love India, you should read Swami Vivekananda. If you don't love India, you should read Swami Vivekananda, and you will start loving India. Because what India represents, what India has represented from time immemorial, is the gentle truth. Swami Vivekananda used to say the mild Hindu, the patient Hindu, the gentle truth of Vedanta that drops like soft flowers on everybody, giving the message of peace and love. But at the same time, universal acceptance. He used to say, if India dies, forget it, the whole world is going to follow suit, because people will simply start killing each other. The very idea of the divinity of everybody and everything, the very idea that this whole universe is divine, accept everybody as they are, is an Indian idea. And that idea cannot be lost. And if that idea is the soul, is the crux behind Indian spirituality. And that is what Swami Vivekananda wanted to explore and find out. So he was born in 1863, January 12th, as I told you. His mother's name was Bhuvaneshwari Devi, born in Calcutta. His father was Vishwanath Datta. Father was, read in all these, had a good English education, was a lawyer, successful man. His grandfather was a sannyasi. His mother was a pious, religious, and wonderful person. But his mother influenced him a lot. She told him when she was when young Naren. Of course, his mother once had a dream. I'm going to tell you this whole thing, okay? So you pick up what you like of it. His mother she used to worship Lord Shiva of Varanasi, Vireshwara. She once had a dream in which she felt that she had a vision of Lord Shiva who came and told her, I'm going to be born to you, okay? And she was very thrilled by that. Anyway, so young Naren was born and she named him Vireshwara actually. Swami Vivekananda's christened name, or rather Namakaranam name was Vireshwara. But then they started calling him Naren. Okay? And so pretty much that's what his name was before he became the world famous Swami Vivekananda. He was called Naren. So young Narendra was irrepressible, young fearless boy, playful and jumping around, hyper energetic. His mom had a terrible time trying to control him. Whenever she felt his antics were too much, she used to drag him to the bathroom and open the tap and make him stand under a shower of water, and she used to put her hand and say Shiva, 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 and to calm him down. And she used to joke that I prayed to Shiva for a son and he has sent me one of his Bhutaganas. That is what his mom used to joke about about young Naren, that this must be Shiva has sent me a demon, and which turned out to be true because he was irrepressible. Throughout his life, he was irrepressible. I'll give you an example. Much later, when he went to Britain, okay, when he went to England, we were at the peak of the British rule. And once again, I'm telling you. And this man, without a naya paisa in his pocket, right? Without a formal education, there is no Ramakrishna movement, there is no ashram, nothing, right? He's just representing truth. When he went to Britain, you know what he said? He had the guts to, the height of the British rule, he had the guts in London. He had the guts to tell the British, he told this. Because he hated Britain. He said, he openly accepted. I went into Britain with a lot of dislike for the British because of what they were doing to India. But later on, but some of his best disciples were Englishmen, British people, some of his most ardent disciples. So later on, he changed his mind. Then he realized that everybody makes mistakes. So he wouldn't hate anybody. So when I said he hated, I was wrong. I ought to say he went there with a lot of dislike, okay, a lot of anger. Yes, he definitely had anger against what was going on in India and the poverty of India. So he went to the British, in the height of the British rule. He told this in London. He said, if India takes up all the mud at the bottom of the Indian Ocean, if Indians take up all the mud at the bottom of the Indian Ocean and throws it on your Britishers' face, it still would not be a fraction of the harm that you are doing to her. This is what he said. He had the guts to say that. Now imagine this, a person going to Britain at the height of the British rule, when you needed a certificate to sit down in a British office. Remember, an Indian needed a certificate to sit down in a British person's office. This is a time when this man goes there in Britain, coolly in London, and coolly says, if we take all the mud at the bottom of the Indian Ocean and throw it on you, still it won't be a fraction of the harm that you are doing to her. That guts. That's called guts. Okay. So Swami Vivekananda stands for guts. Okay. If nothing else, you have to admire him for his incredible guts, courage, fearlessness. He doesn't care who the fellow is. He doesn't care. If this is true, it is true. 2 + 2 is 4. Sorry, I don't care who you are. You may say 2 + 2 is 5. You may be the king of the British Empire. I don't care. 2 + 2 is 4, not 5. That was his spirit. So he was irrepressible. And his own mom also gave him an advice which made him even more irrepressible, because his mom said, Naren, she told him, one day Naren in school got into a fight with somebody and he was unjustly accused by some of his friends. He didn't do anything, but I think teacher and some people blamed him. So he came home and complained to his mother. They are blaming me. I didn't do anything, but they blamed me. He was just a kid. Then the mother gave him a lesson which he took to heart and kept with him for his whole life. She said, Naren, if you are right, what does it matter if others agree or not? If you are right, stay there. Don't bother about what people say. People will criticize you. They will unjustly accuse you, but you stand up for what is right and never deviate from what is right. That he took to heart. That sentence of his mother went deep into him. He was already irrepressible, and that sentence, in fact, made him even more of a maverick. You know, he was an iconoclast. He was, he was like that. So I'm sorry. I mean, Swami Vivekananda has inspired me so much that if I go into superlatives when I talk about him, forgive me, I'm not exaggerating. No words can explain the depth and power of Swamiji's. And this is what, you know, reading his books 150 years later has such an inspiration. I can only imagine what it must have been when people actually stood in his presence and listened to him. So anyways, he was irrepressible, but he had this great desire to understand the truth. Does God exist? Is really the truth of Vedanta true? Is what Indian philosophy says true? Is Indian culture true? He had that question in his mind. So he was a very bright boy, very playful boy. He didn't come top in his class or anything, but he was a very bright chap, very, very bright. And his teachers all noticed that he is an extremely bright person and completely fearless and very playful. He played football, he used to go to the gym, he used to climb the neighbor's tree and pluck flowers and all that. So the neighbor, when he was a kid, the neighbor told the kids, oh, that there is a ghost on top of the tree. If you go to the top of the tree, the ghost will wring your neck. So all the kids were very afraid to climb the tree. Immediately when they told Naren that, Naren said, okay, let me find out for myself. And he climbed the tree that day and he went even higher. And then he said, see, there is no ghost, nothing. You come, climb it with me. So that was his, you don't challenge a person like Naren because he will meet your challenge and beat you at it. So anyway, but this was every day he used to practice meditation. He had read that the yogis of India meditated so much that their hair would grow into the ground. So he'd be sitting in meditation, he'll open his eyes occasionally to see if his hair has touched the ground. One day when he was meditating, a cobra came there, and some of his classmates got in fear and ran away, but he was just watching it happily, and then the cobra went away. He had many, what shall I say, mystic experiences even when he was a child. Every night when he used to go to sleep, he used to see a ball of light here in his forehead, that a rotating ball of light, and then it would explode and cover his body in light. And it is actually, if you go and read yogic scriptures, you will find that these experiences do come for advanced yogis, especially this particular one. But he thought it happened to him every day, so he thought it happens to everybody. He didn't know it was something special. So one day his classmates, when he checked with his classmates said, no, nothing like that ever happens to any of them. Then only he realized this is something that he was getting. But he had many certain inner experiences, but he would not talk about it. But he wanted to know whether these experiences are real, whether they are just imagination of my own mind, whether something can be greater than that, etc., etc. He was basically a spiritual scientist. What is a scientist? A scientist is one who wants to know the truth, right? A scientist is one who does experiments, validating his thing, taking his theory, forming a theory, doing the experiment, checking. That's a scientist. Swami Vivekananda was also a scientist, a spiritual scientist. And so finally, he used to go to many lectures. And so by the time he came, he read Sanskrit grammar when he was 6 or 7. He read Sanskrit grammar, Ramayana, Mahabharata, all those things. And then by the time he came to his teens, he started reading Western philosophy, Indian philosophy. But at the same time, deep in his heart, that pain was there. The pain of seeing India enslaved, the pain of seeing people in poverty, the pain of his fellow men and women suffering. That pain was always there with Narendranath. It never left him till his dying moment. That pain was there. And later on in his life, he used to shed tears thinking about India, how to bring India up. And that is one of the most moving aspects of Swamiji, because on the one side, you have a kingly philosopher. On the one side, you have a brilliant scientific man who will argue and he'll prove and who will. Other side, you have a mystic who plumbed the depths of meditation. You have an inspiring orator. You have a fearless revolutionary, but deep within, he was one of the most compassionate people. He used to weep at the sufferings of others and say and think, How can I help them? That continued to be the dominant theme of Swami Vivekananda's life. That also happens to be the dominant theme of Amma's life. You must understand that only a strong, fearless, courageous person can be unselfish. The moment we are weak, we are cowardly, we can think only about ourselves, we cannot think about others. So the first condition for spirituality is courage. First condition is courage. If you want to help others, you have to be fearless. If we are cowardly and we think only about ourselves, then we will not help either ourselves or others. If you want to make a difference in people's lives, you have to be ready to stand up to criticism and stand up to your principles no matter what. That is what Swami Vivekananda was all about. I mean, that's what I've learned, okay? I mean, different people come to Swami Vivekananda, they learn so many things. He was a university by himself. But what I've learned from Swami Vivekananda is that an uncompromising, unflinching devotion to truth, to dharma. If it is right, I will stick to it. I don't care about criticism. That's that fearlessness. Anyway, coming back. Same thing I saw in Amma. That's a different story. Come back. Let's come back. What was I saying? So he started, really, he was on a fire. Really, is this true? Does God exist? Are these things right? So he used to go to these spiritual lectures, right? Like Brahmo Samaj. The Raja Ram Mohan Roy. There were a lot of revolutionary movements those days. Arya Samaj was there, Brahmo Samaj was there. They were against sati. Some of them were against idol worship. Some of them were trying for widow remarriage. So many social reforms were trying. And some of them were quite westernized. Some of them were very orthodox. Different movements were there in India at that time. And India was in a very chaotic state. But one thing, most of these movements had a slight supercilious attitude, a slight, a critical attitude when it comes to India and Indian culture. Even they who wanted to reform India used to kind of think that, Indian culture is a bit low. It's not much. So only some good points are there. That, attitude was there. Condescending attitude was there. Narayan didn't like that. He didn't like people criticizing India unnecessarily. Oh, later on in his life, how people, they tried to criticize India in front of him and they really paid dearly for it. So anyway, so he didn't like people doing that. But at the same time, he admitted that these are our mistakes. We should correct them. But he wouldn't believe in simply criticizing and all. He used to go to different lectures. He used to ask. But then he always had a thirst. Really, does God exist? As a person, experience God. So Brahmo Samaj was there, founded by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. And after that, Devendranath Tagore was a philosopher who was heading Brahmo Samaj. So Devendranath Tagore was giving a lecture. So Naren goes up to him, and after the lecture, he went to Devendranath Tagore and said, "Sir, have you seen God?" Simple question. See, he used to ask a simple question. He used to go to people and he used to innocently ask. They talk about God and philosophy and spirituality. He'll go, "Okay, all that is fine. Have you seen? Have you experienced?" Fundamental question. Supposing I come and tell you, right? There's something called electromagnetic waves. They travel at the speed of light, this and that, or there's electron. You'll come and ask, "Can you prove it to me? Have you seen? Have you demonstrated it? Have you proved it?" It's a scientific question, isn't it? Have you seen? Have you proof? Is there proof? Can you prove it to me? Same question. Narayan had a love of truth. Okay, you talk about God, you talk about all that. Have you seen? Have you experienced? Can you show it to me? Can you prove it to me? And he used to go to wherever there are these things, he used to go and ask this. People would be embarrassed, naturally. I can also talk to you about spirituality and truth and this and that. If you come and ask me, "Bala sir, have you seen? Have you experienced?" What will I say? I have to say no. Isn't it? Narayan was not like that. So Narayan went to Devendranath Tagore and said, "Have you seen God?" So Devendranath Tagore said, Devendranath Tagore became very embarrassed and he said, "Oh, you have the eyes of a yogi, you must meditate." So Narayan was not happy with that answer. It was like, hand waving. It was not a direct answer. Yes or no, you tell me. So he used to go and ask. And he started developing a lot of interest in Indian spirituality, and he used to study a lot of Western philosophy. He studied Indian philosophy. He studied Kant, Hegel, Schopenhauer. He studied Nietzsche, which are all Western philosophers. He also studied Shakespeare. He also studied Kalidasa, Raghuvamsa, Vedanta, all these Indian books also. So constantly, and the physics and astronomy and science of those times. He had studied those times. So because he wanted to know, right? And literature. He was an incredibly learned person. And so anyway, finally, one day, he used to have discussions with his professor, William Hastie. One day, Hastie told him, there is one mad priest in Dakshineshwar. His name is Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna. People say he's mad. But I think he's the only person who's really experienced something. And he's talking from his own experience. Why don't you go and check it out? That is what he told Naren. So Naren had heard about Sri Ramakrishna. And Naren went to meet Sri Ramakrishna around, this happened in 1881. Okay. And the first meeting was in a friend's house in Calcutta. And that time nothing much happened. So Sri Ramakrishna, with a smile, talked to Naren, few words maybe, and they came off. But Naren, something attracted Naren, and he said, I have to go and meet this man again in Dakshineshwar. Now, Sri Ramakrishna is another entire topic by itself. If I start talking on Sri Ramakrishna, that will take the rest of the night. Sri Ramakrishna, as all of you know, or as all of you should know, was a God-realized mystic, a man in perpetual samadhi, a tremendous yogi, a tremendous being, uneducated, unlettered priest in a Kali temple in Dakshineshwar, near Calcutta. Sri Ramakrishna, I cannot tell you too much about that. We don't have time here. So Sri Ramakrishna was born in 1836, okay, and he passed away in 1886. So Naren met him at 1881. Only 5-6 years he spent with Sri Ramakrishna, okay, and yeah, and Sri Ramakrishna became a priest in the Kali temple, and night and day he spent crying to the Divine Mother, "Oh Lord, oh Mother, if you are true, reveal yourself to me." I mean, the Sri Ramakrishna's life, I cannot go into depth now. It's a fantastic, incredible story by itself, but one of the greatest beings. And Sri Ramakrishna had tremendous love for truth and tremendous renunciation, tremendous passion, and incredible purity. So anyway, he had attained the truth through his incredible tapas in Dakshineshwar. If I have time, I'll tell you about that later. Actually, it takes a complete session by itself to talk about Sri Ramakrishna. So, and Sri Ramakrishna, most of the time used to go into Samadhi. Now, Samadhi refers to a fourth state of consciousness. We are all used to only 3 states of consciousness: waking, dream, and deep sleep. There is a fourth state. There's a fourth state of consciousness, which is called Samadhi, which is called Turiya, on which is attained through a lifetime effort of spiritual discipline and purity. So William Hastie told Naren, he seems to be talking from his experience. Why don't you go check it out? So Naren went to Dakshineshwar and went to see Sri Ramakrishna. And then comes a conversation. I have told you, I think I've told many of you this many times, but then came this conversation that pretty much changed the history of India. Okay, so he went there, and as usual, he's gone there with the shabby kurta and pajama. Naren didn't bother about his dress and all that. He was always in another world. Okay, so he went there, and then he listened to what Sri Ramakrishna was saying. But then interestingly, Sri Ramakrishna asked him to sing a song. And Naren sang a song. Naren was a beautiful musician. He studied music too. He studied German. He studied both Western music and Indian music. I don't know many of you who know this. So, and he used to play instruments. So he used to study, and one of his later on disciples was an opera singer. Okay, so he studied both Western music and Indian music. He was very melodious, and he had a majestic, melodious voice. He used to sing beautifully. So Naren sang this song. The moment Naren started singing, Sri Ramakrishna started crying and came to him and said, "Why have you kept me waiting?" Immediately, Sri Ramakrishna recognized that this is the person whom he has been waiting for. He recognized in Naren the future Swami Vivekananda. And he realized that this is the person through whom he is going to act, through whom he is going to inspire millions of people across this world. And so he cried, he came, wept, and hugged Naren and said, "Oh, why have you kept me waiting? You are a great sage. You are born for the sake of the world, and this and that. I've been waiting for you," and all that. Naren thought, this man is mad. What does he mean he's waiting for me? I have never met him before. He doesn't even know me. What does he mean by blabbering all this? But yet there was something very mysterious and charming. And Sri Ramakrishna was known for his childlike innocence. It was obvious that Sri Ramakrishna was an innocent, childlike person who would only speak the truth. It was obvious. So Naren asked him this question. What's the question? Sir, have you seen God? Simple question, right? He asked this question everywhere. Sir, have you seen God? And the answer simply blew him away. Here he was, this half-naked priest sitting in front of him on the bare floor in a temple. And Naren asked this question, Sir, have you seen God? Sri Ramakrishna answered, Yes, I have seen him. I see him even now, just as I am seeing you, only thing more intensely. And I can show him to you. Simple question, simple answer. And this conversation changed the history of India. Sir, have you seen God? Young Naren asks Sri Ramakrishna, have you seen God? Sri Ramakrishna answers, Yes, I have seen him. I see him even now, just as I am seeing you. Only thing more intensely. And I can show him to you. That's a final statement, right? Then Sri Ramakrishna continued. Nowadays, people cry for money, cry for fame, cry for name, cry for relationship, but who cries for God? If you cry for God, you can find him. That's what Sri Ramakrishna told Naren. And Naren was profoundly impressed because Naren realized that Sri Ramakrishna was speaking the truth and was speaking from his own experience. Coolly, he's saying, Yeah, I've seen him. I see him even now, just as I am seeing you, only thing more intensely. And I can show him to you. Basically, it's like a scientific thing. It's like saying, if you ask me, Bala sir, did you have lunch? Yeah, I had lunch. Coolly, no. Yeah. Bala sir, have you visited Kanyakumari? Supposing you ask. I say, yeah, I have seen there. I have been there. I visited. I can take you also. Simple, isn't it? If you go and ask a scientist, hey, have you proved that an electron is such a particle, such a charge? Yeah, I have proved. I can demonstrate to you also. I can show you. So here was Sri Ramakrishna coolly saying, yes, that what he was saying was God, what he calls God, is a demonstrable fact. That is what is so important in this conversation. What Sri Ramakrishna is saying is God is an experienceable and demonstrable fact. Just like an electromagnetic wave or a rainbow or the theory of gravitation. But there's one thing interesting. He says, I see him even now, just as I am seeing you. That means he's not talking about a person. There is a state of experience, which in Vedanta, in Indian philosophy, we call it God. It is not an external being. It is an internal state of consciousness. That's very interesting, but we won't go into that because I just want to tell you. Then Naren realized that what Sri Ramakrishna is saying is true. That here is a person who is saying, I can show you, I can demonstrate. That means there is truth in Indian philosophy. That means there is truth in Indian spirituality. That means I can prove it. And maybe that has the key to India's, maybe that knowledge has a solution. Maybe that will provide the key to India's misery. Maybe using that we can make India come up. You must understand that. That was his constant motive. How do I help others? So Naren started going to Sri Ramakrishna, but it was not easy. It was 6 years of argumentation and fighting. He used to say, no, I don't believe. He even called Sri Ramakrishna mad fellow. He said, this old man is blabbering, he used to say. But, Sri Ramakrishna prevailed. And those years with Naren and Sri Ramakrishna is fascinating. Because he used to go and Naren started, practicing what Sri Ramakrishna told him. He used to practice meditation. He used to do various things and experience various states. He used to experience various states beyond this mind, beyond this body. And he used to go and check with Sri Ramakrishna. But at the same time, he used to argue a lot and all that. And Naren, and he saw that Sri Ramakrishna used to go into Samadhi and all that. Naren even took a course in neurology, in anatomy, and in Western science, he took a course on the nerves, on neurology, to study the spine and the brain, just to check if Sri Ramakrishna's experiences are some nervous illusion, nervous delusion, or he's suffering from some neural disease, or really he's experiencing something. So that is the level of questioning, and that is the level of testing that Naren put Sri Ramakrishna to. And Sri Ramakrishna also tested him. Left and right used to test him. So this was the time, but Sri Ramakrishna had a tremendous recognition of Naren's greatness. He used to say Naren is going to change the world. He used to actually say that. He said Naren will teach the world. Naren will shake this world. And Naren used to say, you're blabbering. I'm not going to do anything like that. Sri Ramakrishna says, no, you will. And then that was the time when suddenly Naren's father died. His father suddenly died, and the family was plunged into poverty. And they went through hell. The family was plunged into poverty. And his father had taken many debts. And his father was a very, aristocratic man, but he had taken many debts. And so the creditors were all at the door like wolves demanding for the money. And some relatives put a case on Naren's family to say, to have a part of the ancestral home and all that, property case and this and that. Naren's family won the case, but still they were reduced to poverty. Very often there was no food for his mother and his sisters and other siblings. So he used to sometimes go outside, and he used to come and say, I already ate outside, just so that, if he doesn't eat, others, his mom and his brothers and sisters would have some leftover, some extra food to eat. He used to lie like that and say, I've already eaten. And he used to go many days hungry. And at the same time, he was suffering a lot. In later life, one of Naren's sisters committed suicide. So one thing you must understand, these great souls, whether you take Naren's life, Swami Vivekananda's life, or Sri Ramakrishna's life, or if you take Amma's life, you will find they go through intense suffering. You will find that they've gone through intense sacrifice. And it's not a joke. And the heights that they have reached is not so easy. It is very easy for us to talk and comment, but to actually live what they went through is very, very difficult. So one of Naren's sisters committed suicide. You must understand. They were suffering a lot. So Naren's next question was, why is there suffering? If there is God, why is there suffering? This was a big question in his mind. And it's a question that nobody has an answer to. Neither you nor me. That question troubles me, troubles everybody. We don't have a convincing answer to that. In Vedanta, there is an answer, but to feel it, theoretical answer is different, but to understand the answer is a totally different story. So then Naren, even though he started experiencing, even though he started talking to Sri Ramakrishna, arguing and doing all that, at the same time, he started getting very angry, looking at his mother's sufferings and his siblings' sufferings and the sufferings of the poor. He started questioning the existence of God. He said, oh, this is all nonsense. He actually said that. He actually said, all your Vedanta is nonsense. I don't believe in a God where there's so much suffering. Naren, you must understand one very beautiful thing about Swami Vivekananda is, even though he was simply divine, he was intensely human. You must understand, you're talking about a divine being who actually questioned the customs of that day, who questioned whether God exists, who wouldn't believe simply, and who he actually said, oh, I don't believe in God and all. People are suffering so much, what God are you talking about? So that time what happened, some of his other brother disciples, they went and told Sri Ramakrishna, oh, Naren has gone in a bad way, he's talking against God and all that now. Then Sri Ramakrishna used to tell, you shut up. Divine Mother, basically Kali, Sri Ramakrishna had visions of, Divine Mother has told me that Naren will never go in a wrong way, so don't tell me all that. Then one day, even Naren's mother, who was such a pious person, one day Naren had got up to go out to search for a job, and as usual he went to the altar and to chant some prayer. That time Naren's mother said, what is the use of all your prayer? What has God done for us? We are suffering so much. The poor lady, her poverty made her say that, even though she was such a pious person and all her life she had lived like that, it made. And that really hurt Naren. And he really wanted to know the meaning of all this. So, and he went and talked to Sri Ramakrishna. And he had several experiences at that time. One day when he was exhausted, after looking all over Calcutta for a job, exhausted and hungry without a morsel, he came and there's a garden there. I forgot the name of that place in a park. He just laid himself down. I was deeply meditating on this. When all of a sudden it was revealed to him, he had visions of, I can only say, of a deeper order behind this chaos that we see, where everything made sense. And he understood why that in this creation, even though there is a compassionate and loving ground, which we call God, that there, even though that is there is still evil and misery, and why that is there. He understood it and he was in deep peace. But he never conveyed that to others. We still don't understand what he went through. And I have not read him having told what answer he got. That I don't know. I have not read. Maybe there are other scholars who may have read. I'm just telling you what I know. So this was the time when he kept arguing against Sri Ramakrishna. And I'll quickly proceed, okay? And it's a very fascinating story about how, and so this was the time, and so he went to Sri Ramakrishna. And Sri Ramakrishna told him, look, he went and told Sri Ramakrishna, look, my family is suffering so much. There's no food to eat at home. And Sri Ramakrishna said, no, this is, and Sri Ramakrishna used to talk about the Divine Mother, used to talk about gods and goddesses, used to talk about Vedanta as supreme consciousness being non-dual, that everything is God. But at the same time, Sri Ramakrishna also used to talk about the Divine Mother, about Kali. Swami Vivekananda Naren never accepted all that. He said, maybe there is a supreme intelligence behind this universe, but I don't believe it takes any forms like all this. There's a lot of argument going on. So Sri Ramakrishna said, why don't you go and ask Kali, go to the Divine Mother, the temple, Bhavatharini, Dakshineshwar temple. Today is Tuesday. Why? And it's a very auspicious day. Why don't you go and pray to her that your family doesn't have money and for them to have food and shelter and all that. So Naren said, okay, I'll try it. And he went to the temple where Sri Ramakrishna, used to had done all his sadhana. And he found that the presence of Kali, that statue of Devi, of the Divine Mother, was not just a statue. It was alive with consciousness. This is what Naren says. He forgot himself in joy. And he prayed, oh Mother, give me discrimination, give me renunciation, give me wisdom, give me enlightenment. And then he came back. Then Sri Ramakrishna asked him, did you pray for money? Did you pray for food? He said, no, I forgot. No, go again. So again he went. Again he saw the Divine Mother there in the temple. Again he forgot himself. And again he said, oh Mother, give me wisdom, give me enlightenment. Give me viveka, give me discrimination. And he came back. Again, Sri Ramakrishna asked him, did you pray for money? Did you pray for food? Naren said, no, I forgot. Go again. The third time he went again. Again he forgot. He could not ask for anything material. He simply could not ask. He saw that and he just prayed, I want enlightenment. I want, give me discrimination, give me devotion, give me enlightenment, give me wisdom, show me the truth. That he can be forgot. He could not ask for money or for food or anything like that. Right? Because his inner thirst was that he wanted the truth. No amount of external suffering could deviate him from what he really wanted. So then he came back to Sri Ramakrishna and said, you are only doing this. When I go there, I'm not able to ask anything else. And Sri Ramakrishna said, don't worry. They will have minimum food and shelter. So Naren got a job and somehow they were managing, but Naren could not stand there anymore. He wanted to give up the world and he wanted to take sannyas and he wanted to devote himself to the pursuit of truth. So he went on Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna was crying that day and said, he told, I know what you want to do. I know you want to leave, but at least till I am in this body, be here with me. That is what Sri Ramakrishna asked Naren. Naren said, okay. And shortly thereafter, Sri Ramakrishna got cancer, throat cancer. Those days, there was no proper treatment for cancer and all. And they didn't even know what cancer was. They didn't know if it was infectious disease, what the disease is, this, that. Sri Ramakrishna had a terrible time with his throat cancer. And he was dying. They all knew that he was dying. So at that time they had shifted to Kashipur, and from Dakshineshwar they shifted. Sri Ramakrishna's holy consort Sarada Devi was also there. They shifted to Kashipur Gardens, another place where was Kashipur or Baranagar? Kashipur, yeah. They shifted there, and they were taking care of the master. And Naren used to be there, and every day he used to get trained by Sri Ramakrishna. And of course, arguments would go. And gradually started experiencing many things. He went to Bodh Gaya. He meditated, experienced the presence of Buddha. Buddha was a great inspiration for Swami Vivekananda, for Naren, because Buddha wanted to find the meaning of the earthly suffering, isn't it? The entire story of Buddha is he renounced his kingdom and all because he wanted to know the meaning for suffering. He wanted to know how to end the world suffering. That's why Buddha renounced the world. Buddha did not renounce the world in search of moksha or personal liberation. No. Buddha renounced the world because he wanted to know why is there dukkha and what is the way out of dukkha. That is a primary motive in Buddhism, is dukkha and the end of dukkha, the end of sorrow. So you must understand their unselfishness. They were not seeking their own salvation or their own liberation or anything like that. They wanted to find a solution for the world's misery. That is what inspired Naren, and that's why Buddha was a great influence in Naren's life. So anyway, so one day Naren started experiencing more and more. I'll tell you one incident. One day he was laughing with his brother disciples about the old man, about Sri Ramakrishna. See, Sri Ramakrishna used to say that everything is God. This whole universe is pervaded by supreme consciousness. There is, in fact, even what we call matter is just a form of energy. That is what E is equal to mc square says. But Vedanta also says that. But it qualifies with one more statement. Vedanta doesn't stop by saying matter is a form of energy. It says matter is a form of consciousness. That matter is energy, science says, but energy to consciousness step science has not yet made. That Vedanta has made. Hopefully one day science will make that step. When science makes that step, then you will have proved spirituality. But for science to make that step, you will have to do a lot of inner meditation, because the laboratory will become inside. Because you want to research on consciousness, consciousness is inside, not outside. But as of now, science is looking outside, not inside. That is why that equation, energy and consciousness has not been made. But in Vedanta, it is made because the rishi looked inside. That's the thing. Amma says that a scientist is a rishi whose laboratory is outside. But a rishi is a scientist whose laboratory is inside. It's a science only. It can be found. It is waiting to be discovered within you. But we don't look at it. So we simply say that's all nonsense. It's not nonsense. You have not looked at it. So that is the thing. If you look at it and if you take the necessary, just as there are rules and regulations and steps to be taken in external experiment, there are rules and methods for the internal experiment. If you are ready for it, you should do it and find out. But you cannot criticize unless you do it and find out. The problem with us Indians is we say, hey, this is all nonsense. What is there? This is not true. You cannot say that because you have not done this. How can it is like saying gravity is false. How can I say gravity is false? I can prove it to you. No, I don't believe in gravity. Can't you see something is falling in front of you? No, I don't. You can simply say, or you can say, I don't believe in E is equal to mc square. But you have to find out, isn't it? Similarly, when Vedanta says that consciousness inside is the absolute truth, you have to look within and find out. There are rules, there are methods, there are specific paths, and it's reproducible and demonstratable. Indian spirituality is a science, and that is what Naren proved. And that is why the West completely accepted him. And that is why he inspired India. That is why he became free. You must understand that. As as kids of today, you must understand the reason India became free is because Indians developed self-confidence to get up and say, our spirituality is right, our culture is right. We don't need you to come and tell us that we are ignorant. Get out. That's what they said. Indian confidence came up. It's only because Indian national confidence came up that the Indian nationalist movement came up. Swami Vivekananda inspired Rabindranath Tagore, inspired Balagangadhar Tilak, inspired Mahatma Gandhi, inspired every other freedom fighter, inspired Subramanya Bharati. He inspired all these people. He inspired the average Indian to stand up and say, no, my culture is great. I am not a stupid guy. India is not so stupid as you think. Please get out. I know how to take care of myself. That is how India became free. So India became free because of a spiritual change. Please don't forget that. We did not become free just because of a political action or just because of an army or just because of a struggle. All that is true. But behind that is the ideological freedom that we had to get. And that ideological freedom, the freedom that comes only when you understand, you cannot dismiss. I challenge anybody to disprove Indian spirituality. I challenge that. I can prove, even me, without any experience, simply on logic, which is done, which is why so many Westerns, Einstein studied Upanishads. Schrodinger is the father of quantum mechanics, studied Upanishads. Dirac studied Upanishads. Yeah. And we Indians don't appreciate. Why? Because we don't know the greatness of our culture. Why? Because our colonial mindset is still there. It's very important. That's why I say, if you understand Swami Vivekananda, if you understand, if you read Narayan's life, I mean, it's impossible to, like, how can a person who has not done a PhD in physics or anything, how can he come up with a statement about the curvature of light, or about how can he inspire Nikola Tesla? Simply because through spiritual understanding, a man can come to fundamental knowledge. That is India's greatest message to the world, is the science of realization. It is not a belief system, it is a science. It is a reproducible, demonstratable science. Unfortunately, mainstream people may not look at it. Your education, your textbooks don't talk about it because they're not looked at it. But tomorrow they will talk about it. So anyway, coming back. So, so I haven't even finished. My God, we are running out of time. But I haven't even, okay, quickly, okay. So that time, so he was laughing about Sri Ramakrishna, and he was saying, oh, this old man says everything is God. How can this cup be God? How can this jug be God? Then Sri Ramakrishna came into the room and asked them, what are you laughing about? Then Naren said, we are laughing about you only. About what you say, everything is God, this cup is God and jug. How can everything be God? Then Ramakrishna laughed and he came and hit Naren on the head. And all of a sudden, Naren had a very deep experience. And he had an experience of samadhi, where he saw this whole world as a projection of consciousness. He felt it was just like a dream world, just like you see a world in a dream. And he staggered in that state for 3 or 4 days. He went and stayed on a park in Koshipur. He stayed there. He found it difficult to cross the road because everything seemed so unreal. It was like a dream. And there was an iron railing in that park, iron pillar in that park. He went and hit his head on that iron pillar just to see if it was real or not. That's the level of experience he had. The whole thing appeared to be false, just a projection. Anyway, finally, Naren had this terrific experience of realization. And then all of a sudden, he called his brother disciple and said, where is my body? Where is my body? One day. And his brother thought one of the disciples thought he was dying, and he went running to Sri Ramakrishna's room and said, Naren is dying. He's asking where his body is. Then Sri Ramakrishna laughed and said, let him be in that state. He has teased me long enough for it. Then after Naren came out of that state, Naren went to Sri Ramakrishna, and Sri Ramakrishna said, today you have understood the truth. The mother has shown you the truth. But I will keep it under lock and key. It won't be given to you so easily again, because there's a lot of work to be done by you in this world. But today you have understood the truth. Finally, Naren had to accept what Sri Ramakrishna said was true. Meanwhile, Sri Ramakrishna's cancer had progressed so much, and people thought it was infectious. So his brother disciples were afraid to go into Sri Ramakrishna's room. And so Naren, I'll just tell you this incident. Naren, just to make them change their heart and to show, and he felt pained at the selfishness. Here is this man who has loved us so much, who has taught us so much, and when he is sick, we are saying we are afraid to go near him. That is really sad, isn't it? So Naren charged into that room, and Sri Ramakrishna had eaten some gruel, some kanji, and Sri Ramakrishna's saliva, spit, everything was there in that kanji. Throat cancer, I can't. But Naren just went and took the remaining part of that kanji and drank it completely, and said, okay, and told others, come near him now. How can you be like this? So that was his love for his guru and all that. Anyway, so at that time, Sri Ramakrishna again told him, again gave him another experience, and he said, Sri Ramakrishna said, you will change this world. Naren said, no, I won't. Sri Ramakrishna said, your very bones will do it. You will change this. You will be a world teacher. Then shortly thereafter, Sri Ramakrishna died. Sri Ramakrishna passed away in August 15th, very interestingly. August 15th, Indian Independence Day, just after midnight, August 16th, early morning. Sri Ramakrishna passed away in 1886. Sri Ramakrishna passed away saying Kali, Kali, Kali 3 times he said, and he passed away. Naren later on, after this great Swami Vivekananda passed away on July 4th. That was American Independence Day. It's very interesting. These two lives connected India and America. Sri Ramakrishna passed away on Indian Independence Day and Naren on American Independence Day. Anyway, so, and then started a very, very important part of Naren's life. I think I overshot my time, but please bear with me for a few more minutes. I'll tell you. Naren started, the very, very important part of Naren's life started when he became a wandering monk. He took different names. He called himself Sachidananda. He called himself Vividishananda. So Vivekananda name he had not taken. He became a sannyasi, but he took different names. And he wandered all over India, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. And he used to stay in a king's palace one day, another day he used to sleep on the road. He used to go to a village and he'll be sitting there outside a village. And people in the village used to come and they used to find, oh, this is such a learned man. He knows English, he knows Sanskrit, he knows this, he knows philosophy, he knows Western. And all. Then they used to tell the Panchayat leader, then they used to tell the local king. Next day the king would invite him. He used to go and talk to them. Next day again he'll be on the road. So he traveled through the length and breadth of India. And his love for India grew so much. His seeing the misery of India grew so much. And he felt for Indian how to bring this country up. That was his motto. That was his burning fire in his soul. He had already understood the truth. He had already experienced the truth. He had already understood the truth of Vedanta. He already understood the truth in Indian spirituality. But he wanted to know, how can I bring up my country? What can I do to bring up my country? And he was fearless. So one day he went to he was the king of Alwar. He went to the king of Alwar. The king of Alwar was very skeptic those days. He used to talk against idol worship and all. So he talked to Swami. We will call him Swami now because Naren has become Swamiji now. He's become a sannyasi. We shouldn't call him Naren. Sorry, I shouldn't have said Naren, but I wanted to use the word Naren because we're talking about his boyhood days before he became the world famous Swami Vivekananda. So Swamiji was there. Then Then this king was talking against idol worship. Oh, you people are so stupid. You are believing in idol worship and all that. So but Swami Vivekananda tried to explain to him, no, the idol represents something for us. The king wouldn't agree. So right there in the king's court, there was a large painting of the king in the palace. So he asked the prime minister to bring that painting. So the minister brought the painting. Then Swamiji told the minister, please spit on this photo. Please spit on this painting. The minister was horrified. The king is in front of him, and here, this fearless monk is saying, please spit on the king's photo. Then the minister said, how can I do that? Then Swami Vivekananda said, this is only a photo. This is not the king. Why can't you spit on it? No, it represents the king to us. Same way the idol represents the supreme to us. Don't simply blame idol worship. God knows that he is being worshipped. These are necessary instruments. So then Alwar king understood. And he apologized to Swami Vivekananda. But once again, look at the fearlessness of doing that. Sitting in a king's court and asking the minister to spit on the king's photo just to prove a point. Look at the fearlessness, absolute fearlessness. But you must also appreciate the king. The king was large-hearted enough to accept his mistake, right? So anyway, Swami Vivekananda went all the way. He came to Kerala. He came to Karnataka, Belgaum, Raipur, Orissa, Andhra. He came to Bangalore. He came to Thrissur. He came to Kerala. He met Chattambi Swami here in Kerala, and they had talked about mudras and the nerves and the nervous system and all that. He went to Tamil Nadu. He met the Raja of Ramnath. He went to Madras. By that time, word spread around that there is this wonderful sannyasi who is a tremendous scholar and a great orator, but not yet the name of Vivekananda was not yet there. They used to call him different names. And they all told him, Swami, you must go to the West and you must show them what India is about. And Swami agreed, yes, I want to go to the Parliament of Religions. But there was no money. He's a beggar. He's a sannyasi. He has one pet of clothes. That's it. And a kamandalu and a stick. Where is the, how will he go to America? So anyway, some king said, no, we will fund your trip and all that. He said, wait, let me see. Then he came all the way down south. In fact, he even came to one of my distant relatives' house. My father's uncle has told me this. It seems he came there and he said, just leave the door open. I will go off in the middle of the night. Don't worry, I won't take anything. And next day morning they saw and he had gone. So he used to go like that, just wander around. And I used to sleep with the beggars. He used to sleep with the untouchables. Caste system. Oh, when he was hungry and starving, it was some outcast untouchables came and gave him food. And they said, Swami, we cannot come near you, but you are hungry, we want to give you something. He shed tears thinking about, the cruels of untouchability and caste. And then anyway, he came down and finally he came to Kanyakumari. And you all know, the famous Vivekananda rock is there in Kanyakumari right there. Every year, I used to take students and show them. Unfortunately, I don't know when I can do it again, when this corona time is over. I certainly hope we can arrange a trip for all of you and I will show you. He asked the boatman, can you take me across to that rock? The boatman refused because no money. So Swamiji swam there and he sat on that rock and meditated for 4 days. Devi's footprints are on that rock. Maybe that's why he went there. You can see it now. You can go there. It's a famous Swami Vivekananda memorial is there now, right? And then he had a vision of how he has to make India come up. That is where he has now come to the end. Kanyakumari had crossed. He is now at the rock in the ocean in Kanyakumari. India is lying in front of him. He has traveled the length and breadth of India. He's understood her problems. He's understood her greatness. He himself says his heart was burning, thinking about the greatness and the heights that India was and the depths to which it had fallen. That's what he says. And then he knew that he had to go to the West. And he knew what his life's mission was. And he decided, okay, he will go and represent India to the Parliament of Religions. And then he came back and the Raja of Ramnath offered to get him money to go. And then Raja of K3, one place is there called K3. So there was a Raja there. That Raja only gave him the name Swami Vivekananda. He took the name Swami Vivekananda and many people gave him some money and etc. to go on the ship. And he sat on the ship and he went to America. We are coming to the end of the story. He came to, end of the session at least. He went to America through Japan and China. He went to British Columbia, Vancouver, which is now in Canada, and then took a train and went to Chicago. But these sannyasis, they don't have itinerary schedule. There is no WhatsApp, cell phone those days, nothing. They don't even, none of them, neither the Raja of Ramnath, the Raja of K3 or Swamiji himself, nobody had even written a letter to the Parliament of Religion saying this person is coming. He had not registered for it. He had not sent a letter, nothing. They don't even know the date. So he reached Chicago in July. And he realized that the conference was postponed to September. So what is he going to do? July, August, September, he has to stay in Chicago. Where is the money? Who will give him money? Who will he eat? So he was running out of money. So then he came across another friend who told him to go to Boston because it is cheaper there in Boston than in Chicago. So he took a train, went to Boston. He stayed in another friend's house. By the time, but he had got many admirers. People saw that he was a tremendously knowledgeable person. And in Boston, he met this professor from Harvard University, Professor Wright. Then he said, see, I came to represent India in the Parliament of Religions, but I don't have any credentials. I don't have any letter of introduction, anything like that. Then Professor Wright told him, Swamiji, asking you for your credentials is like asking the sun for its right to shine. This is what he said, the professor of Harvard told. The sun doesn't need introduction, isn't it? I am a bright object, I will give you light. Does the sun have to say that? No, like that. Swamiji, you don't need introduction, you go. So they collected money and other things and again put him on a letter and all that to Parliament. Again put him on a train and sent him back to Chicago in September. So he reached Chicago in September. And these sannyasis, he's a sannyasi, right? He has not kept once in his life, he has not kept even a paisa for tomorrow. He is a world-renouncing sannyasi. So his mind doesn't behave like our minds. Our mind will always check ATM balance, this thing, that thing and all. He doesn't have any such thing. So by the day I went to Chicago, you know what he had done? That letter and other things, he lost it. Yet again, he was like a child. In many ways, Swamiji was a ferocious lion, but he was also a child, innocent child. He forgot, he lost it. So now he is in Chicago, doesn't know where to go. And so he spent his night sleeping in an old railway wagon. Railway wagon. Near the railway station, there was one old train, a wagon was kept there. He went and slept there in that night. No food, no change of clothes, nothing, in the middle of the night, somewhere in America, in a man in orange. Even now, if you go with orange clothes to America, they look at you like you're a mad fellow. Imagine those days in 1893, I'm talking about. Then he went and sat in a park. Opposite the park, there was one lady. Her name was Mary Hale. So she came and said, who is this bright young man sitting in front of my house in a park dressed in orange? Who is he? So he came and said, this person, I am Vivekananda, I am so and so. I came to represent India in the Parliament of Religions, but I lost the address. Then it so happened that this Mary Hale happened to be the friend of the president of the Parliament of Religions. Now tell me, what are the chances of this happening? You go to Chicago, you are going to a friend's house there, you lost the address, you lost everything. You went and sat in a park. And opposite the park is the person who knows the address of this person whom we are going to stay with. What is the chance of that happening? Time and again, Swami Vivekananda used to say about how there is a divine plan, divine force taking all of us through. It took him through. The same divine force that led him to Sri Ramakrishna, that same divine force led him to unlettered. Remember, no money, nothing. Just go to America to represent India. No introduction, nothing. So then he went, and the next day he went to the Parliament of Religion, September 11, 1893. And there again, there were many others. People from Arya Samaj had come. Annie Besant from Theosophical Society had come. Many famous reformers, Pratap Chandra Majumdar had come. Many famous people had come. Big politicians had come. This man is, from which organization are you? There is no organization. The Ramakrishna Mission is not formed. Naturally, yes, he was yet to form that. Nobody knows who Ramakrishna is. Ramakrishna was a priest who died in 1886. Do you belong to any organization? No. Do you belong to a company? No. Do you belong to, do you have a letter of introduction? One letter is there from yesterday somebody has given. That's it. So they gave him a slot to talk around lunchtime. They thought some silly fellow has come. Let him finish his talk and then we'll go. They did not know what. And now I have seen. Now that road where the Parliament of Religions was held, that road is called Swami Vivekananda Way. That road is called. I've seen that. Imagine that. 1893, he walks into that building. All these big shots are there. This man is a penniless beggar, sannyasi from India. No organization, nothing. Imagine, supposing you're going to represent the conference. So if you're going to conference, you're representing Amrita or something in a conference, they will ask you, right? Letter from principal, letter from HOD, this thing, that thing, certificate, ID card, this, then only they will let you in. Without anything, if you go, for example, you're going to a quantum mechanics conference. I want to talk on quantum mechanics. Oh, really? What are you? Who's your advisor? What did you publish papers? Where is? No. I have found out some truths I want to tell. Who will let you in? But yet, that's a guts. So he went there. And then you know what? Everybody is saying, I come from this place, I come from that place, I represent this, I represent that. You know what our Swami Vivekananda said? I come in the name of truth. I represent truth. Truth doesn't belong to an organization. 2 plus 2 is 4 doesn't belong to an organization. I represent truth. I represent Sanatana Dharma, the eternal culture of India, which I represent truth. They were stunned. So he postponed. Actually, the great fearless lion that he was, even he had stage fright. Yeah, he says, even he had stage fright. And he postponed his talk by another half an hour. Then after 2 more people talked, then he just prayed to Saraswati and he went. And he said, sisters and brothers of America. And 7,000 people got up and started clapping, not knowing what happened to them. Because that was the power of his personality. Here was a person who's understood the truth, who spent his life for it and is coming and representing truth. And he took the Parliament of Religions by storm. Everybody was stunned. At the end of his talk, 7,000 people ran. Several women ran for his autograph. So another one of his disciples, later on, she became his disciple. She saw that he saw this whole army of women running for his autograph and said, "Young man, if you can withstand this onslaught, you truly are a god." That is what she thought to herself. Then anyway, he became world famous. And people all of a sudden realized, and newspapers started publishing articles. Chicago Tribune, everything, a cyclonic Hindu monk, this person. And he's talking to them about philosophy, about physics. He went and actually said, your entire concept of matter is wrong. What you call matter is energy. He actually said that. Yeah. But he called it consciousness, and he used to link it. So he sat with scientists, he sat with philosophers, he proved using their own terms, he used to disprove, and he used to prove the Sanatana Dharma and Vedanta. They were stunned. Harvard offered him professorship. They were stunned. They started publishing. The newspaper said, we now understand how foolish it is to send missionaries to this learned nation. Suddenly, the India, which was considered a stupid, dull, superstitious, ignorant country of sunk in poverty for 1,000 years, suddenly India was considered a country of great wisdom, culture, knowledge, and philosophy. Overnight. And that remains Swami Vivekananda's greatest contribution. Anyway, so meanwhile, his brother disciples in Belur Math, where Sri Ramakrishna's ashes were there, Belur Math had not yet started, Baranagar had started. They started hearing reports of one famous Swami Vivekananda who's taking the world by storm. And they started, read it, it sounded like Naren. Is this really our Naren? Has he really become world famous? And then a letter comes from Chicago saying, yeah, it is me. I am Naren. Now I am known as Swami Vivekananda. And then they realized that what their guru, Sri Ramakrishna, said came to be 100% true. That Swami Vivekananda became a world teacher. He shook the world by storm. And then only Indians themselves realized the greatness of their culture. And then when Swami Vivekananda came back to India, that's the lectures from Colombo to Almora. Many of you have read that. They gave him a rousing reception. He became world famous. He traveled through India. He started the Ramakrishna mission, the Swami Vivekananda mission. And he used to say, we should go to the villages. You should, no use talking about Vedanta to starving masses. Give them food first. Go to the villages, serve them as embodiments of God. That's what he used to say. May I be born again and again. That's what he used to say. I don't want personal salvation. May I be born again and again to serve the only God that I know. My God the poor, my God the wicked, my God the miserable. That's what he said. Among people. That's exactly what you see in Amma's life today. Exactly the same thing. You see that, there's a different session on Amma I can give you another day, but exactly the same inner call to serve others. These Mahatmas are like that. They don't even care for Amma. Amma actually says that. Even if you can give up the whole world and say, I want liberation, salvation, even that it won't come to you. Even that is selfishness. Even that when you give up and just serve others, seeing everybody as an embodiment of divinity, everybody as an embodiment of the divine, then only the truth will come. That's the thing. So worship this whole universe as a manifestation of God. That is India's greatest message. And that is how India rose up to, after Swami Vivekananda, Naren, the world famous Swami Vivekananda. So then the rest is history. I don't need to go into that part of his story. If you go to extreme depth, it'll take hours and hours. And finally, he passed away. He used to say, I won't live to be 40. He said, I won't live to be 40. And sure enough, at the age of 39 years and 6 months, Swami Vivekananda attained Samadhi. They say that he had a brain hemorrhage and he left his body. He passed away in Belur Math. And interestingly, 2 days before he passed away, just the age of 39 years, 6 months, he told his brother disciple, I want to be cremated there. Imagine a 39-year-old man saying that. He called his disciple, I want to be cremated there. Everybody is wondering, why is he talking like this? 39 years old. Nobody at 39 will say, I'm going to want to be cremated there. If you're 95, okay. But another 2 days, he left. And in this brief 1886, 1881, he met Sri Ramakrishna. 1886, Sri Ramakrishna passed away. 1893, he went to the US. 1902, Swami Vivekananda passed away. In that brief 7 years, he shook India upside down. He talked about the emancipation for women, education for girls, serving the poor, starting schools for them, bringing Indian national life back. And he just shook this country. That is why the Youth Day is named after him. That is why everybody who loves India should read Swami Vivekananda. Then you will understand. You know, there's a fantastic book on Swami Vivekananda written by his Swami Nikhilananda. And this is a book, I'll show you. You have to read this book. This is a book. Okay? Swami Vivekananda biography by Swami Nikhilananda. I strongly encourage you to read this book. I read this when I was in the 10th standard and I just loved it. And you know, that book really had a great impact on me. I'm just telling you at the ending my two personal words. And I always knew that, you know, I also wanted to, I went to the US and all that. And I wanted to come back to India. And then I met Amma and I saw in her a modern Vivekananda. Right now, you can see the way she's serving people and fearlessly and so much criticism, and she doesn't care. So then I asked Amma actually, and I heard that, you know, Amma started this Amrita University where all of you are there. I'll end with this, you know. Amma told me once, why should an ashram start a university? Then I was listening and she said, you know, in India, most people go to IITs and other place, then they go abroad. India loses their brains and they lose Indian culture and samskara. But if I have a place where I can give both values and Indian samskara and high-tech education to them, then India also will gain and they will also gain. That is why the ashram started a university. That is why you are all here. And then when I asked her, Amma, I want to come to India, and I just finished my PhD or something, and got a job in applied materials around that time. And she told me, of course. And then she told me very beautifully. She said in Tamil, she said, India la paranda India ku dhaan vela pananam, she said. You're born and you should work for India. And she told many of my, you know, at that time, many of these people who had gone, you return, you have to serve, you have to return to India and serve. And I'm glad that, you know, so sad that, you know, when I wanted to come back, so many people are asking me, why are you going back? Why are you going back? The only Indians ask me this country. Why are you going back to India? What a stupid question. Why can't I come back to my own country? What is this nonsense? But I'm glad that, you know, Amrita has provided me a wonderful way to come back and way of service. And I see that in Amma's life, I see especially the work she's doing in villages, sustainable development, water, electricity, all that. Swami Vivekananda used to talk about that. About we should have a set of people. I think, you know, if I remember right, we should have people who go with globes and lanterns to the villages, talk to them about this, teach them science and education, and bring them out of their poverty. He used to say all that. In fact, if I find that page, I will. See. Oh, good. Let me read this. So, Swami, I'll finish with this. So Swamiji has written a letter. Supposing some disinterested sannyasis bent on doing good to others went from village to village, disseminating education and seeking in various ways to better the condition of all, down to the untouchable, through oral teaching with lamps, magic lanterns, globes, and other accessories, will not that bring forth good in time? All these plans I cannot write out in this letter. The poor are too poor to go to schools. They will gain nothing by reading poetry and all that sort of thing. We as a nation have lost our individuality. We have to give back to the nation its lost individuality and raise the masses. That's exactly. And you'll see that the same thing Amma is doing. All this village work and this and that. So this is that thing. This is Swami Vivekananda. I mean, I just shared some part of his life with you. But I wanted you to know that because you have to understand that he talked about Indian spirituality to scientists and he convinced them. And I want you to know that there is something incredibly deep in our philosophical traditions. And while we may not understand it, the least I ask is that we respect it. We must be in awe of that. And it is the same philosophy that Amma stands for. Your chancellor stands for the same thing. She is a modern Vivekananda. I proudly and boldly say that, because what she's doing. Which other university is sending students to villages and building toilets and this and that? Which other ashram is doing all this work? So much work. Recently, she distributed 85 crores worth of groceries to all COVID affected, all over Kerala, Amriteshwari, so many things. But Amma's constantly doing that. Why? She says, because everything is God. Everything is, you should serve, seeing everybody as God. That is the message of the Mahatmas. Do not give like this. You should not give like this. You should give like this. You should offer. Because know that what is the person who's received. Because Swami Vivekananda used to say, you must be grateful to the person who lets you serve them, because they are giving you an opportunity to serve. If you are giving somebody help, don't think you're greater than that person. Be grateful that to the person whom you are helping, because he is giving you an opportunity to help. And that will take you to God. That is the way to God. So, Namashaya, I talked enough. Sorry, I think I've exceeded my time. I knew this would happen if I talk about Swami Vivekananda, but you know what? I haven't even finished half of everything, but I open it for questions. I was supposed to talk only for 40 minutes and then you would ask questions. I'll stop here. I want you to know about Swami Vivekananda. I want you to know about Amma. I want you to love India. I want you to be as inspired about this. I want you to understand the greatness of Swami. I want you to understand the great philosophy behind your university, Amrita, also. And that's why I'm telling this to you. So, Namashaya, thank you all for this opportunity. If you have questions, please ask me questions. Otherwise, we'll call it a day. Namashaya.
Sir, it is really important to know about the Guru-Shishya bond, which is really strong. So, how has Swamiji's and Paramahamsa's bond given clarity to this thought?
I talked about that. I told you, right, how he went and drank that gruel. Yeah. His love for Paramahamsa also used to test him. There was a time when Paramahamsa deliberately ignored him. Narayan used to come for many days and Paramahamsa wouldn't talk to him, wouldn't even look at him. But still Narayan kept coming. Then one day Paramahamsa broke down and said, I have been deliberately ignoring you, not even looking at your face. Still you keep coming. Then Narayan said, look, I come here because I love you. I don't come here to listen to you. I love you, so I am coming. I don't care whether you give me attention or not. Paramahamsa was so happy to hear that. See, that selflessness. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. I came. So both tested each other. In fact, if I tell you, if you people want, I'll give you another session on Sri Ramakrishna. My God, Sri Ramakrishna reached a state where he could not touch metal. See, he had promised that he wouldn't touch coins, money. So he wouldn't touch a metal, it would burn his body. So Narayan tested it. He put a coin under Sri Ramakrishna's pillow just to see what happens. And Sri Ramakrishna came and sat on that and screamed and got up as if some scorpion has stung him. Oh my God, what is there? What is there? Then they found the coin. Then Narayan said, yeah, I only tested you. Then Sri Ramakrishna was very happy. He said, never accept. Sri Ramakrishna was very happy. He said, never accept what I say. Test me, he said. Test me again and again. Don't accept just because I am telling. You find out for yourself. See, that is the greatness in the whole thing. See, that is the greatness in Indian philosophy. It is testable, demonstrable, and verifiable. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you once again, sir.
Thank you.
During this period of fear and restlessness, it is the stories of such eminent personalities that give us clarity and inspire our minds. I think listening to Bala sir's talk about one of India's greatest revolutionaries is one of the best ways to spend one's evening. To learn about his journey from Narayan to Swami Vivekananda and to be reminded of his influence and greatness was extremely energizing. I think we should all take Swamiji's mother's words to heart and stick to oneself and to be fearless. Even though we all knew many things about Swami Vivekananda, these facts such as his melodious voice and his knowledge about both Western and classic music was really surprising. And the story that is innate curiosity and hunger for truth is what brought together Sri Ramakrishna and Swamiji really inspired me. And another thing that really provided relief to me during your talk, sir, is the question, why is there suffering if there is God? I think that question is so prominent. I'm sure each and every one of us has felt it. And to know that
Yes.
even the very divine Swamiji felt it and that he was able to get solace in God's divine energy, even in his hard times, has certainly imparted strength to me. And I'm sure it is similar for everyone.
Yeah,
Uh,
he suffered horribly. I told you, his sister committed suicide. There was no food at home. Compared to what he had to go through, we are all very nothing to complain actually. But still, we will complain. But yes,
It is my pleasure to use this opportunity to thank you on behalf of of the entire Ayuth family for taking time out of your busy schedule and enlightening us with your talk. Thank you, sir. I would
Namaskar.
also like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you who have joined this meeting. Thank you all.